Whether you want to grow food year-round or you just want to protect some of your spring crops from a late freeze, this video demonstrates a DIY method for building a simple hoop house structure for raised beds. This is the system that I have used for the past 10 years to protect my vegetable garden from frost and hard freezes. What's up everyone, this is Scott from New Garden Road. I'm here to inform, inspire, and elevate you. Let me know if you like this video. Oh yeah. And while you're at it, subscribe to New Garden Road for more awesome gardening videos. First of all, you want to find some PVC that's 10 feet in length. I use the 3/4 inch PVC. This is also the PVC that's more pliable. It's easier to arc over the beds. Next up, you want to look for some rebar that's 12 inches long and a 1/2 inch in diameter. You'll also need a heavy hammer somewhere in the range of 4 pounds so that you're able to drive the rebar into the soil. This guy right here. Look for some heavyweight row cover that's 12 feet wide. Oftentimes this row cover is sold by the foot. A lot of times I'll see it in a 10 by 12 foot piece. That's not big enough to cover my 4 by 8 raised beds. I need about 18 feet to safely have enough slack on the end of the beds to close them up and secure them. Spring clips are going to really come in handy in securing the row cover to the PVC, and that's how I do it. Just be sure the ones that you're using have a really firm grip on that material, because when you get some cold fronts, those winds coming in from the north, they can be really strong. You want to make sure your row cover stays in place. So let's talk about how you set this all up. The first thing that you're going to do is grab 10 pieces of rebar. Starting at one end of the long side of your bed, take that rebar and set it down 12 inches from the bed frame. This is real easy to do because you can just lay that rebar lengthwise and then stand it up, and boom, you have 12-inch spacing right there, and you didn't even need a measuring tape. Now you're going to need a heavy hammer, whatever you have. So well used. Use that hammer to drive the rebar into the soil by 6 inches. And then you'll simply be repeating this process until you have all 10 of those rebar driven into the ground. Next up, I'll be placing the PVC over the rebar all the way down to the soil level, and then I'll be arcing it over the raised bed on top of the other rebar. And that's pretty much your hoop house right there. Also, I found that it's really easy to trip over these rebar once you get them into the ground. So you want to go ahead and put the PVC on top of there pretty quickly. And when you take the PVC off to dismantle your hoop house, make sure you pull up those rebar immediately. Just keep an eye out for that as you set up your hoop house over your raised bed. Keep in mind, you could use shade cloth, 6mm plastic, or some other materials on the same structure. That's why I really like it, and I often use it throughout the year. So I like to store my row cover in some Rubbermaid trash cans. It's just really easy to stuff them back in there when I'm done, or to pull them out when I'm ready to assemble everything. So I like to take that row cover and pull it along the length of the bed, and that gives me an opportunity to square it up a little bit. From there, I'll just go ahead and start pulling it over, adjusting it as I go. You want to make sure it's square and you've got the right amount of slack on each end. I will say that it really is helpful when your row cover, such as this DeWitt, has the branding going down the middle. It's really easy to place it centered on the hoop house. Now it's time for those spring clamps, and you may be able to get away with using as little as 6. I always like to start on the north side of the bed. A lot of times when I'm preparing for cold weather, there's a pretty strong north wind. Then you want to repeat that process on the other end of the bed, making those clips close to the ground, and you want to have that fabric pretty tight on the long sides. I prefer to have the slack on the open ends of the bed, and that way, as I weigh them down, I know they're going to stay in place, and I know the sides are nice and tight. So this is the point where, manage it how you want. You could just take a couple of bricks, a couple of rocks, or you can do like I do, cinch that row cover up real good, just kind of fold it over, find your own style. Then you want to place that lumber on top of there to kind of hold it down, make a seal, and then I'll roll up that row cover on top a little bit and place a brick or a cinder block there. So I think this is a pretty practical and efficient way to cover a raised bed. Most of these supplies are readily available and in abundance at a local hardware store. I utilize this same setup to employ shade cloth, and it's not uncommon for me here in Central Texas to utilize shade cloth and row cover within the same week. After I set everything up, I really like to go around the perimeter and inspect things, make sure that it's sealed up. Just remember, it's only going to do so much. There are a few crops that I've tried to cover up in the past that it just wasn't enough heavy-duty protection, and without any supplemental heat, it can be difficult to bring some of the warm season crops through, such as squash or even tomatoes or green beans. You might have to double up the row cover, you might have to put some incandescent Christmas lights in there. Those things can bolster the heat under that row cover and help you pull things through. This is a tool, it's really helpful, but as gardeners, we are at the mercy of Mother Nature, and that's just the way it goes. But I just want to share with you why I designed it this way. It really came about through common sense and based on what the available resources were. When I was doing some research, I saw a lot of different designs and methods, and a lot of them really set the hoops inside of the garden frame, or they put some brackets on the inside or outside of that raised bed frame, and that's where they attach their PVC and secure it in that way. While that makes perfect sense, and that's a solid design, one of the central premises of this technique is that you're trapping ground heat. So the heat that's in the soil is going to dissipate slowly overnight, but by putting this insulated cover on top, you're going to trap it. It's still going to escape, but it's going to be much more slowly, and that's going to enable your plants to survive those cold temperatures. By setting my rebar 12 inches off of the bed frame, that enables me to cover more square footage and trap more ground heat. Also, I don't have to cut the PVC. When I take that and connect it to my rebar and arc it across my bed, that gives me 40 inches of height at the apex. That's perfect for a lot of my taller winter crops such as broccoli and kale. And furthermore, it makes great use of the row cover, which comes 12 feet wide. So I put that on top, and I've got a foot of extra material on each side. Then I only have to cut that fabric for length, and that's a little bit less work. So it's just something that's practical for me and my specific application. I always recommend that people take things with a grain of salt and find out what works best for them, because there are thousands of ideas out there on how you can best do this or how you can cheaply do this. I'm just going to offer my experience, my practical approach to designing this and implementing it, and I think the last 10 years of implementation speak for itself. So it's worked for me, and I've learned the hard way, chilling with my kale in the sunshine. I hope it helps you. Now check out more awesome gardening videos on my channel. You can grow your own food. Keep it organic. You'll also find more of my gardening content on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or TikTok. Fresh from the garden every week.